Welcome to Group Y Live. I'm Oli Russell-Cowan, and I'm super excited to be joined today by Florian Klass. Florian grew up in Munich, Germany, and spent half his life skateboarding, snowboarding, and playing in punk rock bands. He's always had a creative and individualistic approach to life. As a senior marketing and brand strategist with over 2 decades of experience, Florian has led international teams and implemented global marketing programs in the FMCG industry. At Red Bull, he spent 15 years as a key brand architect and senior global marketing board member, driving the brand's global success and consumer marketing intelligence. Leading talented global teams, he has set industry benchmarks and nurtured careers across all 5 continents. Today, Florian runs his own consultancy, K&Co, where he curates a collective of interdisciplinary professionals to help brands, organizations, teams, and leaders focus on their core strengths. A marketing veteran and certified business coach, he simplifies complex challenges to improve leadership, effectiveness, and drive long-term business growth. Florian also leads the European CMO Council for the Conference Board, a global business think tank and insights organization. Florian lives on the Atlantic coast of Portugal with his wife, 2 teenage kids, a dog, and a bunch of surfboards. Let's jump into it. Florian, great to have you here. How are you, man?
Thank you, Oli. Great being here. I'm doing well. I'm just coming out of the festive season, the holiday season. First day back to work, it seems, and life is good.
Nice. And Florian, I mean, I'd love to. We're going to kind of go on a bit of a roller coaster in terms of, you know, your background in action sports, how it all began. And you were a former senior executive at Red Bull, where you were heading up, I guess, global entertainment, culture, music, and you were there for 15 years. I'd love to, if for all those listeners and for everyone watching, if you could give a bit of a background on yourself and
more than happy to do that. So, I mean, I guess the very brief nutshell version is I was born in 1977, which is when Elvis died and punk rock emerged. So it seemed to be this year, the spring of something new. And then I was really, like probably so many other people that are just listening or watching, I'm a kid of the 80s. I grew up with all the great stuff in the 80s. Was heavily influenced late 80s already by snowboarding and skateboarding and really when I was like, I don't know, 12 years old or whatever, got into that watching Police Academy with a skateboard. I think it was Rodney Mullen or whoever was in that Police Academy 4, whatever it was, and Back to the Future and all these great things that led into that. And then I grew up as this snowboard, punk rock kid in southern Germany, in Munich. Spent my days in the mountains, on the streets, doing this and that. Was about to graduate when I was 18, but fell in love with this girl and with music in particular, played in bands, spent my time skating and snowboarding. Didn't graduate, dropped out of school, started working right away, trying to earn some money. And this is really how the first year of my, call it professional career, in hindsight, kind of started. Doing different jobs in booking agencies and worked at music venues and worked at event agencies and like early internet days, before the first bubble burst, all these great things. And just, I guess, school of life was really what taught me many, many lessons. Then eventually in my early 20s, met my wife, ex-professional snowboarder. And then when my wife was pregnant, which was in 2006, 2006, our daughter was born, we decided to move to the countryside outside of Munich. And I started a new job at the global Red Bull headquarters in Austria, a Viertel near Salzburg. And this is really where I guess my life took a couple of turns. Obviously, starting a family, becoming a father was quite a pivotal moment for all the various reasons. Starting my career at Red Bull, which lasted 15 years, which was really the greatest ride I could ever imagine, finding myself in. Here we are a couple of years later. living in Portugal. We're almost neighbors, and running my own business, and enjoying life more than ever before.
Nice. And before we kind of get into, thank you for setting the scene, and I'd love to find out a little bit more how you got started in, I guess, the action sports industry, in terms of, because you were like part of like Pleasure Snowboard magazine, and set up that whole kind of music section of like when magazines were, this is kind of like late 90s, I presume, right? When
yes. Yeah, I mean, I was really part of it. I was adjacent. So my, obviously, being a snowboarder, being a skateboarder, and these things, or these two passions, really defining my life and everything. I moved in sort of the skateboard community in and around Munich. And Pleasure Snowboard magazine was just emerging in, when was it actually? Probably mid-90s, I would assume. And actually my roommate back then, Bene, we lived together for 3 years. He was one of the founding members and editor-in-chief. And I just turned out to be, I guess, that punk rock kid, or punk rock, played in punk rock bands, etc., etc. And I saw the amazing opportunity of getting free CDs by just sending, I guess, music requests to the labels, and they would send you the new CDs like Happy Turf and Fat Wreck and Def Jam and whatnot. And then I wrote the music reviews, and that turned into I guess a bigger music section within Pleasure Snowboard magazine. So I really combined three things here. I was in the snowboard world, and we had these great parties, and we all met in I don't know, Garmisch-Partenkirchen and in Zillertal and whatnot. I wrote about music, which I loved anyway, and I got free CDs. So what else? What more do you want? That was amazing. And then my wife was a professional snowboarder at that time, and she was traveling quite a bit, and I was sort of the adjacent element to her, just enjoying the snow, enjoying the whole vibe. Plus, with my band back then, we used to play a lot of snowboard events. So we played the Kaunertal snowboard opening a couple of times. We played in Switzerland. We played in Austria, Germany, all over the place. And we became part of the soundtrack, I would say, for a couple of years for snowboard events in the Alps. So I was always not really the action sports guy, if that makes sense, but I was always this adjacent music element to it.
And would you say you kind of orchestrated that like punk rock lifestyle around the sports in a way, like so you could go on snowboard trips, you could go skating, or did they just kind of happen simultaneously? Because that was sort of what was going on at the time.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it was this time where the Southern Californian punk rock bands, Lagwagon, Pennywise, NoFX, Bad Religion, you name them, and the action sports, the board sports scene just grew together. It was this one symbiotic thing that just happened in the late 90s, all the way up to probably the mid 2000s. And it just became this one thing. And every snowboard video was full of punk rock music. Every skateboard video was full of punk rock music. Not every, but a lot of the punk rock musicians back in the days came from a skateboarding or snowboarding background. So it was this one symbiotic situation. And we all in our band, most of us had a snowboard or skateboard background. So we all would go to obviously the right concerts, but then we would be in touch with people organizing the concerts at a snowboard event, etc., etc. And then one thing just led to the other, and I was happy to be able to merge both worlds and really feel comfortable in both worlds. And then obviously you had the opportunity, you played the gig at night, and you went up on the mountain in the morning, and that was amazing.
And did you kind of think about like how you could pursue it in terms of being a tour manager, being in the bands, or was it then trying to sort of balance, do work part-time?
I think I lived that as probably many kids back then, I lived that dream of becoming a musician and really having a career or building a career out of it. I had to come to the realization I think we were good, but we were not outstanding. So we never really made it on that. We never really cut through that threshold where you can make a living as a band. And at one point, and that was probably in my mid-20s, I just had to come to, I guess, the point in my life where I had to take a decision. Either I continue doing music, but then go all in, which I realized I don't even know if I want that, to be honest. Or I focus on my professional career, meaning work. But then I probably wouldn't have had enough time for still playing music. And then I just took the decision to completely quit the music portion. I think that was also the time when skateboarding became a little bit less important in my life. Snowboarding was always there until we moved to Portugal. But it was this, I don't know, like in my mid late 20s, where a lot of things just sort of pivoted towards probably more family oriented, getting married, planning to have a family, trying to earn money. And this is just how things kind of faded out, but there was not this like big bang situation.
And Alex, your wife, was she still touring? Because she was like competing in half pipe, is that right? And kind of doing the circuit.
She was doing the circuit, half pipe, and a little bit of border cross and big air. And she, to be honest, I don't even know when she officially quit her professional career. It must have been probably in the early 2000s as well, like 2003 or 4. And it kind of coincided. I think we both probably just sort of shifted from her being a professional athlete, me being a semi-professional musician, towards, okay, let's focus on work. But we always enjoyed what we did. So it was never really, it never felt like a burden or giving up something. It felt like a natural kind of transition or progression.
Yeah. And then you were kind of doing these media roles and like working for an events agency as well. And then how did that all lead to getting your foot in the door at Red Bull? And then essentially moving to Austria and like moving to headquarters.
I was, so we got married, we went on our honeymoon, and in between our wedding and the honeymoon, I had to file bankruptcy with an agency I was running with 2 other guys, an event agency in Munich. So between the wedding and the honeymoon, we filed for bankruptcy. We just closed shop, I guess. And I walked away with a bit of debt. And so it was a bit of a weird honeymoon, knowing that we're freshly married, everything's amazing. I have no job, I have debt, and I have no fucking idea what to do.
Is this pre-kids or like did you already?
This is pre-kids. This is 2005. And then we went to Andalusia, to Nerja, and I was just calling everyone, basically saying, "Hey, this is the situation. Do you know anything? Do you have any jobs?" And due to my music and snowboard affiliations, I knew a lot of people at Red Bull, both in Germany and Austria. And so there was this one job coming up at global headquarters in Austria, where they were just about to further venture into the music sphere, working with artists and opinion leaders, etc., etc. And went there for a few interviews, had a few conversations, got the job, and for whatever reason, I just got stuck there for 15 years. And then we moved only 3 years later. So I was still commuting. I was commuting, I think it was 198 kilometers one way. I was commuting probably 4 times a week from south of Munich to Fuschel, with a lot of driving. Was pre-podcast. So it was audiobooks and it was still, I think, the 5 gigabyte iPod back then. So I think I made it through the 10,000 songs fairly quickly. It was a lot. I mean, then we moved to Austria when our son was born in 2009. We moved to Austria 3 years later, and
yeah. And what was it like at the beginning then? I mean, we're like sort of starting out, kind of looking at Red Bull back then, 15 years ago, and like that whole, I guess, sort of the brand marketing and the cultural marketing that they were renowned for, and the huge budgets they had back then. Like, how was all that?
it was. I mean, two perspectives here. For me, it was absolutely fascinating. For me personally, like walking into that headquarters building and meeting all these people, it was hugely inspirational. Because it was probably for the first time ever that I worked with people that I really admired and appreciated, and we were all kind of different but like-minded. So just from that note, it was highly inspirational, and obviously the stuff that Rebel was doing back then, it was already an established brand. It was already like a very, very successful business, obviously, starting back in 87. So that was already 20 years in the making.
Yeah.
But still, it felt. I think there were 450 people at headquarters in Austria. Today, there's probably, I don't know, I don't even know the numbers, but I would guess it's 3,500. So you more or less knew everyone. You would meet people and you knew them by names. You would have lunch together, etc., etc. It was very like a small world. Was back then, sports marketing obviously hugely established, hugely successful. All the crazy things like Rebel X Fighters and Crash Ice and you name it, like everything was already existing or just emerging. Mm-hmm. And the culture marketing sphere or the space was super small. It was early days. It was two people, Olli Holzmann, who brought me in to Red Bull, also a former snowboard professional. It was Olli and me basically being the culture marketing team. And then we had probably 10 people all around the world, one in Australia, one in Canada, one in Spain, one in Italy, etc., who were running music things that no one really cared about. And it was tiny, but we were just sort of unpacking it and starting it. And it was early days. Everything's possible. There's no boundaries whatsoever. Let's just try cool stuff. And it was fantastic.
And would it be like you and Ollie kind of coming up with ideas or then speaking to different divisions, like looking at, the various different sports elements the Red Bull were doing and the media side, and sort of saying like, okay, like this could be a gap. Let's try something here.
It was probably two things. It was, yes, us coming up with ideas, but mainly it was, and that's 90%, mainly it was talking to the network, talking to artists, talking to people from the industry, talking to creatives, just talking to people that were smarter or more experienced than us, and just asking the question, what would you like to do? Like, what is your dream? And how can we help you bring it to fruition? And this is how most of the concepts really started, to be honest. It's just tapping into existing microcosmoses, tapping into existing networks, having the right conversations, listening to the right people, and then adding the Red Bull recipe, which is budget on the one hand side, but then really it's infrastructure and the commitment to do something and to really pull it off. So creative, the idea, very often, same holds for sports. It's very often the athletes or some amazing bright minds in the industry coming up with a great idea, and then Red Bull brings in the means and becomes the facilitator and the creator of it. And this is really how we started.
So, I mean, basically it's kind of looking at like having those conversations on the grounds, looking at what's happening culturally, and then the sky's the limit in terms of like ideation and thoughts with the people that are kind of pushing the needle and like what.
Pretty much. And let's not forget, back then Red Bull was the David and not the Goliath. Red Bull was still sort of the the rebellious underdog kind of brand. It was already kind of moving in the mainstream with Formula One and soccer and whatnot, but still Red Bull was still perceived as the good guy. And over the years, obviously, once Red Bull became more commercial and more mainstream, for lack of a better term here, this is when it also became a bit more difficult with artists, in particular creatives, to associate. But back then, it was really exactly how you just said it. It was just having conversation. What we did a couple of times was stone thrower sessions, where you would bring in hypercritical people from the industry, from the creative scenes, and just sit down and basically ask them, what would you do? Like, what is it? How can Red Bull contribute to what you are doing? How can we really add value? And let's forget about advertising. Let's forget about selling cans. What is it that you really need? And that would then just emerge some ideas and patterns and whatnot. And at one point, obviously, you have to add that commercial element back in again. Yes, we have to show the brand. Yes, we have to show a logo. Yes, we will create content, etc., etc. But it helped to kind of get the essence of the idea first, clearly defined, and then you would add how you package it and how you communicate it and how you create the content out of it. But it was a lot of deep conversations in the early days, to be honest.
And looking back, are there any of those major projects that you're particularly proud of? I mean, you were I guess overseeing like hundreds and hundreds of events across the globe.
Yeah, it was a lot in the end. I think we had probably, I don't even know the number, but I think globally we probably did 1,500 to 2,000 events per year. In like moving more into like the heydays, 2015, 16, 17, 18, whatsoever. I mean, I still would say the project, which I haven't started, but I had the pleasure and opportunity to lead it for many years, the Red Bull Music Academy, which was this amazing global music program which ran for 20 years. And every year we brought 60 up-and-coming musicians from all over the world to one city in the world. So we went to Sao Paulo and Rome and Barcelona and New York and Melbourne and you name it. And we set up shop for 4 weeks. We had studios, like bedroom studios, one proper studio, recording studio. We brought in music legends to have these speaker sessions and lecture sessions. And it was really this music heaven that we created, where people just came together and exchanged and created music together, and it unheard of. And this ran for 20 years, and it was probably one of the most pure music programs a brand ever conducted. Still, people refer to it today as one of those highlight moments. And then there's a lot of other projects that felt right. And when I say felt right, what I mean with that is it provided meaning to the artists that participated, and it created these magical moments for the audience that engaged with it and were entertained. Be that, I don't know, some of the Red Bull sound clashes where we put two bands on two opposite stages and having communicate musically with each other, whether it was the Red Bull Revolutions in Sound, where we had the Millennium Wheel in London with, I think, 32 of those pots, and each pot was taken over by an iconic nightclub in the UK. So you had 32 iconic nightclubs at one night. I think it was 2 or 3 revelations, which takes 30 minutes, one revelation. Amazing DJs performing like mini parties in these hubs. It was back then probably the most simultaneous live streams. I think we had 32 live synchronized and simultaneous live streams broadcasting the show, and that was 2013 or 14. So we created these moments that were kind of the creative music cultural equivalent to what Red Bull did in sports. Mm-hmm. And that always, it felt great, to be honest.
Amazing. And like how was it kind of managing those projects, looking at the scale and like the teams doing it in these locations, getting things like permission? I mean, for doing it in the Wheel in London, there's so many moving parts, right?
I think, and this is probably the recipe for success in everything you do, is to have amazing people doing amazing things and empower them and give them the tools to do what they do best. For me personally, it was always fairly easy, to be very honest, because I was sitting in this kind of ivory tower situation in Fuschel, a small village with 1,500 inhabitants in the middle of Austria, in a James Bond-like headquarters building. And I personally, I probably wouldn't have been able to pull anything off on that scale. Simply because I'm probably lacking the knowledge and the skills. But we had fantastic people on the ground, be that pretty much in every country. You had a team of, like in the UK, for example, I think we had a culture marketing team, probably 5 or 6 people. And they just, again, had the right network, working with the right agencies or the right people on the ground doing the production. It was really, this was the one thing I really learned at Repl, to be honest, is finding the right people for the right position and then leading them in the right way, empowering them, giving them the opportunities and the means to do the best they can and really deliver the best possible outcome. That's really how it works.
And I mean, how did it then, like, so going from those years, then when there was a bit of a turning point in 2020, I mean, like the whole world changed during COVID. There was a bit of a situation. Like, would you be able to sort of let us know about that? I don't know if you can expand on it, sort of like what happened.
Yes,
during that time.
2020 was, I mean, on so many ends, I guess, the perfect storm. Obviously, with COVID pandemic hitting. What happened in the Repl world is, so pandemic hit, in first lockdown was in March, April, whatever, and then the second one in fall. And that coincided with the protest against systemic racism in the US, caused due to the death of George Floyd. And what happened in the summer of 2020 was that there was an immense pressure on brands and on corporations, on companies to take a stance. So there was this silence is complicity. Mm-hmm. If as a brand you wouldn't clearly state on whose side you are, so to speak, you would get a solid backlash. And Repl's policy always was to not comment, to not make company statements, but let the content speak. It was always about the athletes and the artists and the content, and Repl as an organization didn't really have a voice, if that makes sense. So there was a lot of pressure on the one hand side from, I guess, society, and there was a lot of frustration, and also within the teams, especially in the US, especially in the UK, some other markets, where they said, hang on a second, why my company, my brand, not comment on what is happening here? Why are we not taking a stance? And so what happened is that there was it's like a pressure cooker. Pressure is increasing, people get more frustrated, etc., etc. And then what happened is that information was leaked to press in order to put a bit more pressure on the Repl leadership team. And one of the elements that was leaked to press was a one slide of a presentation that I showed months earlier in the US during a meeting where we talked about cross-cultural collaboration and the risk of stereotypes and how we can make the US teams and the European teams work together better. And the slide showed a I guess, humoristic map, which is obviously a matter of definition, called How Americans View the World. So it's one of those funny maps that you would see online. Politically not quite correct. And this was taken out of the context as a proof of the racist view of the world of Red Bull. So I suddenly found myself in newspapers all around the world, more tabloids, boulevard newspapers. With
As the
my
face of it,
as
all
the
right.
face of it, I found myself with my name, my portrait photo, as the poster boy or the representative of Red Bull's racist worldview. And that, with everything else, just led to the situation that me and two of the executives in the US got laid off. The culture and entertainment department was more or less shut down or put into hiatus. And that was pretty much the end of my career at Red Bull. To be honest, it was, in hindsight now, back then it was a bit of a interesting situation because I haven't really been exposed to something like that before. Not everything was nice, but it was an amazing learning experience, I have to admit, because there's so much to unpack from it. So yeah, but this was pretty much, that was a huge turning point in my life.
I mean, there's been a lot of, I guess, many people would have been in this situation that when they've been laid off, made redundant for whatever the reasons are. But having this happen to you on such a sort of, I guess, public level, where it's in, it's on Fox News, it's in the Daily Mail, it's literally everywhere. When that all blew up, how did you cope with that? I mean, what was like sort of mentally, like, how did you deal with that all?
The first thing I learned, I guess, was to not take it personal, which sounds easier than done, because obviously it is about you as a person. But really what happened is I just happened to be the placeholder at the end of the day. The interesting story here was not about me because no one knew who I was. The interesting story was this huge brand, Red Bull, has an issue. Let's drill into that. I just happened to be the face and the name at that point in time. Really what the two things I did, I talked to a lot of people. I had, first of all, the parting process with Red Bull was absolutely fair and respectful and wouldn't say amicable, but there's no hard feelings. There's no regrets whatsoever. It was absolutely fine. And to be very honest, I looked at it. I was 45 back then, or 44. So it was. I got an okay package, and I had the opportunity in my mid 40s to just take a year and a half off, and kind of reconfigure my life without any pressure, which is an amazing opportunity to have after 15 years of doing something. Yeah. And I also felt that my time had come, to be honest, but I didn't have the guts to call it quits. So this was the kick in the ass I needed. Not the public stage, to be honest. I didn't need the spotlight. But it probably was the right time, to be honest. So the two things I did, I had a lot of conversation with friends and people I felt that could help me in that situation. Help me as in just giving me good advice. And just talking to people and opening up and I guess trying to make sense of it helped a huge amount. And the second thing is just ignore it, to be honest. There's nothing you can do when you find, that's at least my experience, when you find yourself in I guess a media crisis situation and you're the person that just gets beaten up in press, it usually only takes a day or two because then the next person will get the beating. So it's gonna wash over you and there's nothing you can do. You can, I don't know, try and write a letter to the Daily News or whatever. You can send an email. You can try to do a video message. No one cares because it's not about me. people don't care about me. People care about Red Bull has an issue, and let's drill into that. So I just basically enjoyed the summer and tried to make, and I make it sound a bit cooler and easier than it was. But I had a lot of great people supporting me and giving me confidence, and that was really probably what kept me sane.
And what bits of advice were you getting from them? Would you say was like kind of the key takeaways of that?
Dug down. It's like you're, and you know, it's when you're in the ocean surfing and there's the set coming, 5, 6 big waves, and you're right at the sweet spot where they break. There's nothing you can do. You can just go, okay, I'll take the beating. You can't go left, right. You just dive.
Hold your breath, right? That's it.
Hold your breath and dive, and then you come up again. And you're like, oh shit, okay, there's one more. Go down again. Eventually, it will flatten, and then you can decide whether you go left, right, forward, backward, whatever you want to do. That was probably the best advice someone gave me. Just take the beating / ignore it. And then once the waves have flattened, breathe, and then take a conscious decision and decide what you want to do. Do you want to, I don't know, start a media campaign trying to explain yourself? Do you want to do interviews? Do you want to write a book about it? Do you want to sue anyone? Do you want to do nothing? So I decided to do nothing. And in hindsight, I think it was the right thing. I don't know. You never know. But that was the best advice. Just don't do anything. Just let it happen and see what happens.
But I wouldn't say you didn't do anything. I mean, then you kind of thought about like obviously kind of planning next steps and then looking at starting your own business. And yeah, how did it go from sort of switching gears from this corporate environment into then doing your own thing like you had done before?
It was, I mean, not doing anything referred more to the media situation.
Yeah.
Just the media situation, nothing you can do, just let it pass. The interesting part for me, as I said before, was I had this amazing opportunity of just sit back, relax, look at life as a whole, and then decide what I want to do with the second half of my life. And things that really stood out for me was the level of I was overwhelmed by the freedom I had. After 15 years of being in a lot of people will be able to relate to that, I guess. In running the corporate treadmill, everything is just fast and organized and structured, and probably 70% of my day was not self-determined. It was like I had meetings and I knew I had this and that. And then 30% of my time I could kind of do what I felt was right. When I got sort of spit out, I literally sat in front of my computer waiting for emails. And I think the only emails I received were Amazon order requests or order confirmations. So I ordered a lot on Amazon just to get emails, pretty much. And it was disturbing. And I didn't have any calendar entries. I had no to-dos. I had no deadlines or deliverables. And I was literally overwhelmed and didn't know what to do. And then I went into a very drastic regime of journaling and morning reflection, evening reflection, weekly reflection, more writing. So just to create this rigid framework for my life in order to understand, okay, I get up at whatever in the morning, I do this. At 8, I sit in my computer, I do my morning reflection. Then I do these 3 things. I needed that in order to get, not to say sane, but that's the wrong word, but just to find a rhythm, I guess. And then the second thing, I've quickly realized that I actually did not want to go back into the corporate world. And the simple reason for that, it's probably 2 things. A, my job at Red Bull was so amazing, as in amazing brand, amazing people, the level of freedom and autonomy I had to do the cool shit we did, with the amount of budget we had, is probably unheard of. And I couldn't imagine going to, I don't know, the Nikes and Spotifys and Apples, and they're all amazing, but I couldn't see myself in those even bigger systems, having such opportunities and that sort of freedom. And again, I might be wrong. That was just based on conversations I had back then. My perception, at least, really early, the decision was, I'll start my own thing. And I said it before. For me, it was always about the people. It was not really about this artist or that dancer or this creative. I was interested in it, but what really inspired me and made me the most happy was working with the people I worked with. And that led me to the decision to dive into leadership coaching and team coaching. And I did a year-long study and training, and got my certification, and turned that into my business now, which is in its third year probably now, and kind of works. And I'm sitting in Portugal. So to be honest, life has took a great turn. And I don't know, hadn't it happened back then in summer 2020, we probably wouldn't have this conversation now. So I'm very grateful.
I guess sort of taking all those experiences now with the business, is it sort of split between coaching and sort of leadership as well as brand marketing? Has it kind of got a mixture of elements, I take it, right?
I mean, here's the natural progression. I'm still, after like 4 years in now, still perceived as the Red Bull guy. So I still work a lot with brands on brand strategy, brand development, brand tactics. How do we get that Red Bull magic, that Red Bull recipe, and extract whatever's needed for any other brand and help that brand to grow? That is, when I started my business, it was probably 90% of what I did. Today, I'd say it's 60, 70, roughly 70% of what I do. The whole coaching, which is really working with executives, working with leaders, working with teams, on getting them up and running, increase performance, get a better understanding of how they tick, help them to, I guess, unfold the full potential, is obviously then 30% roughly of my time. The plan is within the next 2 years to basically bring it on its head, and focus more on the coaching and leadership work opposed to the brand work, and then not fade it out, because it's still great and it's fun, but I feel that I'm enjoying more working with people than working with brands, if that makes sense. Yeah. So this is where I am.
What would you say, like, kind of with the consultancy, with your time at Red Bull, what advice would you give to people that are either, I don't know, if they're working within action sports, within marketing, branding? Would you say, I mean, and like definitely hearing what you were saying with people and surrounding yourself, I mean, would you reckon that's the most important thing, or kind of what?
I think that there's a couple of things. So if I look back at my time at Red Bull, there's two things I regret. The one thing is I never really built a strong network, which sounds weird because you're in this Red Bull position and you're working with lots of people. But at that time, I was more concerned about shielding myself off, because everyone wanted something from me. Everyone who approached me wanted, and again, it wasn't about me. It was what I represented. It was the brand. So, I wasn't on LinkedIn. I wasn't on any social network, because as soon as I was the Red Bull guy, people would approach me asking for sponsorship, for money, for this, for that. So I had a very small network. Amazing people, but very small. In hindsight, I realized, hang on a second, I should have invested a lot more time and energy in actually reaching out to people, building strong connections, etc., because this is really what is driving my business at the moment. All of my clients, literally every single client, is coming from a Red Bull connection. So this is really something I would advise everyone: be very considerate and thoughtful, but also proactive on how you build your network, because you might need it later in a good way. That's the one thing. The other thing is I learned a lot during my Red Bull time. It was basically my university degree, if you want. Pretty much everything I apply today when working with brands, I learned at Red Bull. What I missed a little bit is to be more, again, proactive and a bit more systematic about how I want to grow as a manager, a leader, a professional. I probably could have done so many more trainings. I probably could have done so many more, I guess, studies and courses and whatnot during my time to just become a better professional. So those two things, anyone who's still in a corporate job and trying to pivot into consulting role, I would advise. And then on the consulting role, no one has really waited for me or you or anyone. And you have to fight for your space, and you have to come in and have a very clear proposition and a very clear product. And it took me probably 2 years to not. I got it. I understood it. I was able to comprehend it, but to convert it into something tangible and really create something, that took ages. For me, at least, it was very hard. And the Red Bull recipe, you can't just copy paste it, because it has to do with all the different elements. So you can just take the idea and translate the idea for the respective people you work with. And then you also have to face the fact that usually it's only 30%, 50%, if at best 75%, they will implement. And the rest, they will either not be able to afford, or they don't have the patience, or they don't have, I don't know, the perspective to see why that is important. So don't get married to your ideas. At least that's what I learned.
That's great advice. And would you say, I mean, kind of that action sports background, whether it's skating, snowboarding, it kind of teaches you resilience and being persistent, right? And that's sort of one thing when you do set out on your own, it's just, you got to go for it.
I mean, I think there's two schools of thought here. I'm an advocate for what you just said, and I think that is what like the philosophy of skateboarding is. It's an individual sport. It's just you and your environment, and you try to use it in the most creative way. And I just had a conversation the other day, and probably you know it best. Like, even today, when I walk through a city, I see the city with skateboarders' eyes. I see this rail and this ledge and this staircase, and I'm not thinking, oh, there's 5 stairs. I'm thinking, oh wow, that's a cool spot. And it's so weird what it, like, it's so stuck in your brain. As much as I can't listen to music in a completely neutral way, because I'm always hearing, oh, the bass line, and I'm kind of dissecting a music piece and sort of putting it into. So it takes away that innocent look and that innocent perspective or listen. What I will say, for me, I was never into team sports, and it's weird because I love working with teams. But I'm also, I need my me time. And I discovered surfing fairly late. I always kind of was surfing a little bit like on vacation trips, but only once we moved to Portugal, I completely, or that was part of the reason, I guess, why we moved here. It became the number one passion in my life. And so many times I just don't care if I get great waves. For me, just sitting there for an hour or two in the ocean and just sort of being in my space, not talking to anyone, and that is the best thing in the world. And I think, yes, as a skateboarder snowboarder, surfer, motocross, you name it. Trying things again and again and again and again. Succeeding after putting a lot of effort and pain into something. The lesson of success doesn't come easy. I think this is something probably the world got wrong, or the younger generation got wrong today with all the influencers and everything we see in social media. Success does not come easy. You have to work for it, and it can be painful, and it can hurt, and it can be annoying, and it's frustrating. But once you get there, once you nail that one trick, the reward is amazing, and it's priceless, and you can't substitute with anything else. So this is probably the one thing I've learned, is just to stick to it and plug on and go for it, and eventually it will work out, and you'll get that trick.
Nice one. And for all the listeners, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way of getting in contact?
I hate to say it, but I guess it's LinkedIn, and so LinkedIn. I think it's LinkedIn / Florian Klass. Just Google my name. Or it's Klaass, KLAAS.co, which is my website. And I'm happy to have conversations and to make new friends.
Awesome. Thanks, Florian. Well, it was great catching up. I really appreciate you giving us the time, and fascinating to hear everything that went down at your time at Red Bull, and now with the new agency, and wish you all the success with that. And we got to catch up for a wave.
We will. Thanks for having me, Oli. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks,
and talk soon.
Cheers.
Bye bye.